Greetings again. Now we're in lecture 5B, and I'm going to talk about six kind of specific and short, kind of almost bullet point kinds of things to emphasize all the different kinds of cultures that the 15,000 years of Native Americans being here is skimmed over. Again, land stolen. The religious institutions said it was okay. The educational systems said it was okay. The government thought of them as being less than human, so it was okay. Even academia today still has hundreds and hundreds of Native American burial remains that tribes have asked for back, and they said no, as if it's their right to keep those remains. So let's begin our conversation talking about the Chaco Canyon civilization in New Mexico. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. They're referred to as Anasazi Indians or Ancient Indians. Some consider that not a good term to use. But what do we know about this civilization? Well, first of all, it was from 850 to 1250 AD, so 400 years, and they had a road system. They had outposts. They had these big kivas, these round ceremonial buildings, some of which we still don't know what they were for. They had an extensive trade network for turquoise. As far away as Mexico, they found the turquoise from this area, as well as things from the Aztecs in the Chaco Canyon area. They had this elaborate drainage system in the Chaco Canyon area, so they would accumulate water in this high desert area. They had very sophisticated astronomy, oddly enough built on the moon, more so than sun and stars. And it's very, very sophisticated, updated, long before, there was a Galileo. Second group I want to talk about is the Navajo. So the two largest groups here in the United States is, if you just put one Native American group down, the Navajo are the largest group. If it's in combination with other groups, the Cherokee are the largest groups. But what I want to talk about here is, again, how Native Americans are often pictured. So a couple of years back, there was a movie with Nicolas Cage called Wind Talkers. And if you haven't seen it, you're not alone. Not a lot of people saw the movie. But it talked about how, since the Japanese were breaking our codes so easily, they went and they found that the Navajo language had never been written down. Now, it had almost been pushed to extinction by the Indian boarding school system, in which students were taken off the reservation. They were beaten and tortured if they practiced their own religion or spoke their own language. Yet, the hubris of white folks coming to Native American reservations, coming to the Navajo and saying, listen, now that we've almost destroyed your culture, can we use you as basically code talkers? So there would be Navajo embedded with the Marines, and they would talk, and the Japanese weren't able to break their code. But just the idea that this was represented as this wonderful patriotic movie in which each code talker, each Navajo person, was paired with a white guy who they were told, oh, this guy's here to protect you, when in fact, actually, his job was to shoot that person in case they were being overrun so that the code would stay intact. Let's talk about the Cherokee. They, again, the largest tribe, as long as if you have more than one Native American or more than one ethnic things on the census. And they were struck with the Indian Removal Act in the 1830s and were put on the Trail of Tears from the southeast all the way to Oklahoma. And this was a torturous, terrible thing. It was a inhuman practice because they weren't really given food and preparation time and just wholly uprooted from their area. We forget that Native Americans were from all over, including the Nez Perce, which were in the Washington, Oregon area. They did a lot of fishing-centered production. And their original, to show you how treaties work, their original 7.5 million acres in treaties was reduced to 750,000 and then again reduced from that once gold was discovered, pushing the Nez Perce to the brink. Another group on the opposite side were the Iroquois Indians. They were composed of what was called the Six Nations, and the Iroquois Confederation between these Six Nations was a big influence on the early founding fathers about how to put different people with sometimes different goals together. And those six groups were the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora around the Great Lakes region. They did farming. They had these long houses where they would often live in sort of a pseudo-communal way. They practiced a democracy and were known for their ability to have diplomacy. They didn't have any like sheriff or police force. They'd had no courts. The idea of acting honorable was enough. Another group, the Sioux Indians, one of the oldest group, the Dakota and Lakota groups of the Sioux, were known often by Sitting Bull and the Battle of Little Bighorn, as well as what happened at Wounded Knee, which in an effort to fight back spiritually against the elimination of their lands and culture, they had something called the Ghost Dance, and that was treated harshly. The events of Little Bighorn, where, again, Custer's last stand is represented as this brave thing, when in fact he was a blundering fool that took 200 soldiers into a group of several thousand Native Americans, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, Sitting Bull, and all because, again, they'd found gold and they were trying to push the Sioux off their lands. And again, another thing to remember is in 1862, 38 Sioux, after the Dakota Wars, were hung by Abraham Lincoln. We have the Athabascan groups. They are linked to Asia across the Bering Sea Bridge, we feel. Again, different organization. Athabascan tribes are matrilineal. The elders are women. Wealth in the group is shown by what you give away, not by what you accumulate. It's a female-centered culture. Husbands go to live with the wife's family. Their tools and clothes all come from the animals that they hunt. Again, very much related to the environment that they live in, and they had to manage and steward. And that's why I think many people do try to turn to Native Americans, sometimes in an overly stereotypical fashion. How do we learn to live with an environment that by our sheer presence often we pollute and make worse? All right, so that's lecture 5B. And again, the magic word for this lecture was Chaco, from Chaco Canyon.